Hey everybody, and welcome back to my weekly reading vlog. It is Tuesday at about 9:40. So we gotta get this started. But also, I finished a book, so I should probably talk about it. I did go ahead and finish Rejected Princesses by Jason Poros. This is a sort of nonfiction book collection of stories about women that have either been overlooked by history or a lot of incorrect information has been attributed to them. It does include actual historical figures, but it also includes like myths and fables and that kind of thing as well. Mostly like nonfiction history, but like also those myths as well, which I think is interesting. I decided to go ahead and just really focus my attention on finishing this, mostly because I had the realization last week that I wasn't enjoying it as much as I really wanted to, and I finally understood why, which is that I actually listened to a podcast which is very similar. It's called Noble Blood, and it basically is a half-hour long podcast that focuses on various nobles and telling, retelling some of their famous stories to try to be more historically accurate. And I appreciate how it's done on the podcast more than I appreciate how it's done in here. So I do like the wide variety that is in here. I like that most of the stories are only a couple pages long, so it's very digestible. I like that it is more or less arranged in order from like tamest stories to mature audiences only, although I do have some issues with the rating system that was used. And I do generally think that this is really good, especially if you've got kids and kind of want to introduce them to a wide variety of historical figures. I think that's really great. The other major problem that I had with this is I didn't always love the tone of the author and the fact that their personal comments were kind of inserted into these stories. And just, I like the more historical, like, let's point out the problems but not be sassy about it kind of tone. And so this didn't always quite work for me, but I did still enjoy it. I think it's worthwhile. I'm glad to have it on hand, especially as part of the reason why I was trying to read this so quickly is because my older child has been really wanting to dive into it. So now I know exactly like which stories he is able to read, and that's great. So yes, I am finished with this one. The one of the other things that I'm in the middle of is Walk on Earth a Stranger by Ray Carson. This is the first book in the Gold Seer trilogy, which is a young adult Old West fantasy trilogy. Old West, I don't know. It's that particular time in history, but we're following our main character of Leah, and she, for reasons, decides to head out to California during the gold rush, and this is her story. This is a buddy read with Julie, and we are both making our way through it. I am now on page 206, so pretty close to the halfway mark. And surprise, surprise, we're both enjoying it. Julie and I have not had great luck in our buddy read picks, but so far we're both enjoying it well enough. So that is good. This is a reread for me, and I really like Ray Carson's writing, and I really like our characters, and just generally how fast paced it is. There's a lot that I really enjoy, but that kind of like Old West setting is just not my favorite. So even though I like it, this will not this is not going to become my new favorite Ray Carson trilogy, but I am enjoying my time with it. And then the last thing that I'm in the middle of is The Space Between Worlds by Mikaya Johnson. And so this is an adult science fiction standalone, and essentially our main character of Kara has the ability to travel to alternate dimensions, because the one rule that they really know very much know is that to be able to travel to an alternate dimension, your alternate self that is there has to already be dead. And so Kara is special in that she's already dead in like the vast majority of worlds that they know about. And so she can travel to almost all of them. And then one of her other selves dies in kind of interesting circumstances. And so she decides to investigate it. And the story goes from there. And I'm now on page 80, and this is just so like interesting, and it's very twisty, and I'm kind of just sucked into this story. I don't particularly love our main character, but the story is so intriguing that I'm so excited to dive into this and figure out what exactly is going on. So yeah, both of the books I'm in the middle of, I am very much enjoying. I would love to finish up The Space Between Worlds within the next couple of days. Julie and I are going to try to finish this before next week, so because I know that her work gets pretty busy. So we'll be making good progress on both of these books going forward. But that is all I have for this update. So until next time, bye. Hey everybody, it is now Saturday night at about 9:30, so it's time for me to wrap up this reading vlog. So first, Walk on Earth a Stranger by Ray Carson. I finished it. Julie and I both finished it tonight actually, and it was really, really good. Like, I will admit this reread I think probably was more enjoyable than my first read for two reasons. The first is that I did actually go in knowing and accepting that Wild West fantasy is just not generally my deal. Like, just knowing that the setting is not going to be my favorite really helps me focus on the other parts of the story. And the other is just that it was really fun to talk to Julie as I was reading this book. But the thing that really struck me with reading this one is just how good Ray Carson is at her character work. Like, even with our main character of Lee, as she generally goes in, but that's the name she generally goes by in this book. So Lee is 15 and 16. She does turn 16 in this book, and she feels like it. And even as she's making choices, as she's trying to make good choices, like, it's the kind of thing where they're the choices where you can see the kind of adult that she's going to grow up and become, but they're still 15 or 16-year-old person choices, you know, they're not quite right. And I just really appreciate that. Also, just kind of generally in the background, there was some discussion and you know, poking at things like how layered people can be, where they're a good person to you and turn around and will say some amazingly racist things. In this book, it is towards Native Americans, which is very much in keeping with the time, but was a bit uncomfortable to read, not gonna lie. But like and showing Lee reacting to this, because her best friend Jefferson is half Cherokee, and so she's like trying to figure out how to formulate a response to this very racist behavior, and she doesn't quite get it right. And part of that is because she's 15, 16 years old, and also because she's not the majority opinion, so she doesn't really know how to kind of push back against that. But also, it's very interesting that we kind of also take a look at some of the other characters too. Like in this book, there is a character multiple characters actually, who proclaim to be good Christians, but a lot of their good deeds are very pro forma. I'm doing this because I feel obligated to, rather than actually feeling a sense of charity as they do it, which is very interesting. And again, this is another thing that Leah kind of pushes back on. But even as, you know, we have these kinds of things happening, they're still very much background. They're not the main part of the story. And so I like how much layers that adds to this otherwise fairly straightforward plot. So yeah, I really enjoyed this time around. Like I said, it's not going to replace Girl of Fire and Thorns as my favorite because, I mean, the setting, generally speaking, is just not, it's just never going to quite be my favorite. But I did, like I said, I enjoyed this so much more this time. I think that this is probably going to end up in the 4-star, 4.25 star range. And then we have The Space Between Worlds by Mikaya Johnson. And I don't know exactly where I was when I updated you last, but I am currently on page 122. And I will say that I actually stopped reading this. I don't know, like I said, I don't know where I was last update, so I might not have even read anything since then. I don't know. But if I have read anything, it's not a ton. And I will say that I have hit a point in this book where I'm struggling to suspend my disbelief, which is, I'm so upset about this because, like, up until this point, I don't like our main character, but that's okay. I don't need to. This is one of those stories where I don't need to like the main character. I understand her. I understand her motivations. The story was super twisty and interesting, and then this thing happened, and I'm like, hold on there. And it's so frustrating when you get this really great story that you're enjoying, and then you just hit that snag. So, yeah. So I'm trying to, like, you know, recognize that this is a problem I'm going to have and just accept it for what it is and continue reading. And I mean, that's what I'm going to end up doing. I will finish this out. And I actually am going to focus on this and try to finish this one pretty quickly. Now that I have finished Walk on Earth a Stranger, this will be the one that I focus on. Yeah, and then next week, just sneak peek, I will pick up Like a River Glorious, which is the second book in the Gold Seer trilogy, the sequel to this book. Julie and I are also going to be very loosely reading this together, but we shall see. I do really want to try to finish The Space Between Worlds before I get too far into Like a River Glorious. That's the plan, at least, which is all next week. But anyway, that's where we're at. I finished a great book. There's one that was great, and now I've hit a snag, but I'm going to push through, and maybe it'll get better. That's what I'm going to hope for anyway. But that is it for this update. So if you leave me comments down below if you have read any of these books, or if you have thoughts about, you know, what I think about the books, let me know down below. But if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!